Right. So the PMP exam changed in 2021, and since then, there's a new format. And this is what you're going to be tested on. 50%. So there are three domains that you're going to be tested on. One domain is called process, right? Of course, we've gone through 49 processes, right? Agile has its own process, but Agile's processes are very few compared to um, waterfall. This is one of the reasons why Agile is faster because it doesn't have as much processes. So 50% of your exam questions are going to be based on processes. Now, your exam questions are 180 in number. So that means 90 questions will be based on processes. 42% of the exam is going to be based on how you deal and manage your team and stakeholders, right? And of course, in waterfall, the way you manage your team and stakeholders is different from the way you manage your team and stakeholders in agile. And then the business environment, and this is the business side of projects. This is how we look at how projects link with the organizational strategy or contributes to the organization's bottom line, improvement, capabilities, and core, right? So we also have business environment, right? So these are the three domains that you're going to be tested in, right? Now, these domains are further divided into two parts. These domains are further divided into two parts. And what is that? 50% of the exam is based on waterfall, and 50% is based on agile and hybrid. Now, remember, since 2021, PMI has introduced agile and hybrid. Before 2021, if you are taking a PMP exam, what I was going to teach would not pass the 49 processes. But now, we all, of course, there's no longer one size fits all project management approach. So it's now a key requirement for us to really understand agile to an extent, agile and hybrid. So how does this work, right? So this is how it works. So you put this into every domain. So that means that 50% of your questions is based on 50% will be based on processes, right? That means out of that 50%, 25% of the questions on processes will be on waterfall, and 25% of the questions will be on agile and hybrid. That's what it means. 25% of the questions will be on waterfall, 25% of the questions will be agile and hybrid. So we also have 42% on people, right? So when we look at 42%, 21% will be how you deal with people in waterfall, 21% will be how you deal with people in agile and hybrid. Yeah, Peter, I see your hand up, so
Yeah.
please go ahead.
A quick one. See, when you said hybrids, I want you to really understand what do you mean by hybrid? Are you talking of a combination of waterfall and agile or
Exactly. Hybrid is a combination of waterfall and agile. So let me take one of I think it was Cynthia that told us about a project, a shopping mall, right? If you look at the construction of a shopping mall, you can actually use a hybrid approach where the major structure is built by waterfall, but for each customer or each tenant, they can use Agile to modify their own development, right? Which is a hybrid approach, which means the shopping mall may have a standard waterfall development of the shopping mall as a whole, but individual clients can use an agile approach to execute, meaning that their own stores may be ready even before the shopping mall is completely ready. So you have opportunities where you can use an agile hybrid approach on some projects if you really understand the how agile works. So that's a agile. I hope you get that, sir. That's the hybrid rather.
Yes.
Yes. So that's hybrid. When we combine agile and waterfall, usually it could be well, of course we're going to talk about hybrid before we end this course. Usually hybrid comes when you one phase of the project you use waterfall, another phase you use agile, right? You can do it like that, or you can combine the two practices into one project. We'll talk about hybrid soon, so that you can really spot out hybrid questions. Okay, so let me continue. So when it comes to questions on people, 21% of your questions will be for people, how you manage your team and stakeholders in waterfall environment. 21% will be how you manage your team and people in hybrid, agile and hybrid environment. For business environment, 4% of your questions will be the business environment in a waterfall setting, and 4% of the exam will be the business environment in an agile or hybrid setting. So this is how you're going to be tested. The full exam is 180 questions. So you could actually do the maths. Basically, 90 questions are going to come from processes. And that's why we really need to understand the processes, right? Develop project charter. What is the process about? Identify stakeholders. We really need to spend time with processes, right? Because half of your exam questions are on processes. Then we'll look at people and business environment. Okay, so this is the structure of the exam. Now, let me just say one more thing about the exam. So your exam is a combination of multiple choice, multiple answer, drag and drop, fill in the blank, but it's not theoretical. So it's computer based. They also they've used paper based in the past. Not sure it's still currently used for regions where probably internet is not accessible. So I'm sure that nobody here will have that. I'm not sure anybody here will need that paper-based exam, but they used to do it in the past. All right. So let's move on and talk about what happens when you pass the PMP. So just imagine you just finished your exam and congratulations, you've passed your PMP exam. What happens next? So this is what happens. You need to follow the PMI code of conduct. PMI has a code of conduct for professionals, people that pass PMP. We have a code of conduct, which I'll share with you at the end, and also point you to where you can get a code of conduct, the do's and don'ts of the profession, right? Every profession has its ethics. So once you pass the PMP, you're also going to automatically agree to follow PMI code of conduct. Now, when you pass the exam, you need to maintain 60 PDUs over a 3-year reporting period. So what is a PDU? A PDU is a professional development unit. And what does that mean? It means that you have to keep improving yourself. PMI doesn't want people to pass PMP and they have it for 20 years, but they've not updated themselves. So what they require is that every 3 years, you must update your PDUs, which means you must what do you call it? You must get 60 points. Now, don't worry about this because we also have a package to help you take care of your 60 PDUs. Once let's say you are certified, you can do your 60 PDUs. And it counts for every 3 years. Now, the good thing about this is that you don't have to take another PMP exam if you keep maintaining your PDUs. So what happens is that when you pass the exam, let's say you pass today, your certificate will read January 26 or January 26, 2025 to January 25, 2028. It will be 3 years. So if you meet up with the 60 PDUs, right, you will pay a fee after 3 years, and they will send you another certificate. The fee is about $105, not expensive, not expensive. And your new certificate will read 2025 to 2031, which means they've added another 3 years. So part time, your certificate has a time limit because they expect you to get points. So what are these PDUs? PDUs come from when you take courses that give you knowledge on project management. So take, for example, after this course, you decided to do Microsoft project training, which we offer, and it's a 2-day training. So 2 days means you spend 8 hours, right, per day. So from that training, you can claim 16 PDUs. That's how you build your points. But like I said, we have courses that can give you 60 PDUs that we offer people in our community. But the bottom line is that PMI wants you to keep updating yourself. I've been doing this since 2008. So I'm probably in my 6th or 7th cycle of renewing my PDUs. All right. Okay, so let's move on. Now, Code of Professional Conduct is not part of the PMBOK guide. You can get the Code of Professional Conduct from PMI's website, and it covers your responsibility to the profession. As a PMP, what is your responsibility to the profession? And it also covers your responsibilities to customers and the public, which means we also have responsibility to the general public and to customers. So for example, as a PMP, if someone is maybe modifying their building without a building permit, you should bring it to the notice of the government. Why? Because it's your it's your social responsibility, your responsibility to the public, right? That's what we call social responsibility. So this section of the course, and we'll talk about this in the last 20 or 30, 20 minutes of this course, that's at the end, we'll talk about professional and social responsibility, which you can call ESR, right? So there's an ethical side of project management as well. Okay, so I want to give you a secret. The secret, our secret on how we ace the PMP exam. Of course, I've been doing this for like 15, 16 years, and I've done it in a number of countries. And I trained an Indian in Canada. I think she was working in Shaw Communications, a internet-based company. And after she passed the exam, she introduced me to our Indian community, and I've been training Indians since then. But the reason that anyone like that will want me to train is because they get results. And there's actually, a three-step process of how we ensure people pass the exam. And that's what I want to share with you now, right? And so let's look at it together. They often say, if you do what successful people do, you yourself will become successful. So that's exactly everyone that I've trained that have followed this three-step process, most times they pass the exam. So what is this three-step process? Number one, have clear objectives. Begin with the end in mind. And what do I mean by clear objectives? Plan. Look at your calendar. We should be done in 8 weeks, most worst case scenario, 10 weeks. That's 2.5 months from now. I recommend personal study of 3 hours a day, right? For 6 weeks to ace the exam, which means with another 1.5 months, you should be ready for the exam if you spend 3 hours reading, which means worst case scenario, 2.5 months plus 1.5 months, in 4 months' time, if you do things right, you should be able to take your exam and pass it. That will be April, May. You can decide now that this is the date I'm going to write this exam from now, right? And immediately this training is done, we work on your application and we schedule that date and you're not moving it. Now, why is this important? You see, when you set goals or you set a target, your mind helps you. Your mind ensures that nothing distracts you towards achieving that target. That's why goal setting is very important. So if you don't have a clear target, because I have people I've trained after the training, you have to come back for another training. Why? Because there's no clear target. So the first step is 4 months from now, pick a date, and minute. Schedule your exam after this training and then work towards it. That's the first step. Set clear objectives. Know what you're doing. Know when you want to do it so that you're serious with yourself. That's step one. Step two is immersion. So for the next 8 to 10 weekends, we are going to be talking about project management, right? And this is the immersion process. And we're trying to get into your subconscious so that you can be seeing projects everywhere you go, right? It's more or less a reprogramming of how you appreciate projects, how you work on projects, and that's what we're going to do for the next 8 to 10 weeks on the weekends. Now, if you have not set clear objectives, it's possible that distractions can keep you out of class. Or I have this important thing, I must come. Of course, they will come, but even if you can't be in class, you should watch the recording before the next class. You can even study along. If you study along, it means that when we finish the course, if you're reading along as we're going, you'll have a shorter time to write your exam, right? So immersion is what we're going to do for the next 8 to 10 weeks, right? Then step three, this is all you, because this is what happens after the training. This is your preparation. And immediately we finish, I expect you to be spending 3 hours a day. Look at your schedule. Even if you need to do it very late at night, right? Just maintain 3 hours. If you cannot meet up with 3 hours, do 2 hours or 1.5 hours. On your weekends, make up for it. And this is where we're going to be looking at questions, sending you questions, doing it on a daily basis, and ensuring that you are getting ready for the exam. So if you take these three processes, steps, I'm very sure you will ace the exam, right? So this is it. I looked at how I passed the exam. I set my date before I started reading. I read because I didn't want to waste the money. I read very hard because I had a clear objective, and I passed the exam. And that's it. And I'm sure if we follow this three-step process, we should get the same results. Okay. So we're going to start with the first module, which is the framework. This is where we're going to talk about foundational concepts, definitions on project management, right? So this should take us a couple of weekends. And once we're done with this, the foundational knowledge of project management would have been acquired, and then we can now build on the knowledge areas. So this is where we're starting from, and let's dive in. So let's start with some statistics, numbers. Business is all about numbers. If the numbers don't make sense, then the business doesn't make sense. So let's look at these numbers, these statistics. These statistics have probably been gathered over the past 7 years, right? So some of them may have changed, but this are something that we can work with as that reflects what's really going on around the world. So let's start with the first one. Only 58% of organizations fully understand the value of project management. 58% is like 60%. So let's say 6 out of 10 organizations fully understand the value of project management. Now, that means if we have 10 companies represented in a particular room or location, it means that 4 out of 10 companies really don't understand what project management is about, right? Which means 40%, some of them don't have a clue, some of them have some understanding, but not all of them know the value of project management the same way, which means in those organizations, in the 10 organizations, projects will be handled differently. So there's a gap. I want to show you the gaps that exist. Secondly, poorly trained project managers are attempting too many projects. So these poorly trained project managers are handling several projects at the same time. And then a lack of project funding. So companies are not able to fund projects very well. These three things are the top three project management challenges in Wellington's survey. So this explains why some projects fail. They are handled by people that don't understand how to manage projects, or poorly trained, or lack of project funding, or someone handling too many projects. These are top three project management challenges. Let's look at this one. The PricewaterhouseCoopers study of over 10,640 projects found that only 2.5% of companies completed their projects 100% successfully. So what does this mean? Now, let's say we're looking at 10,000 companies, right? I know it says here 10,000 projects were surveyed, but let's convert this to 10,000 companies, and 2.5% of companies complete their projects 100% successfully. What this simply means is that 2.5% of 10,000 is 250. So 250 out of 9,750 companies are the ones that complete their projects successfully. So what does completing projects 100% successfully mean? It means that those projects were completed within the project objectives, scope, time, and cost. was finished, the scope was achieved, time was achieved in the right time frame, right? Maybe it was 10 months, the project was completed 10 months, and it was achieved according to the budget. That's one way of saying that a project is successful. There are other parameters, but that's one of the primary ways that we meet scope, time, and cost. So only 250 companies out of 10,000 do this. So you can see the math is very low. So the question is, what happens to the remaining 9,750 companies? So some of them do not complete the project. In fact, maybe many of them. Some of them miss the scope of the project. Some of them delay, the project finishes very late. Some of them, the budget goes up. So you can see that there's a need to be able to get projects under control. So that's what we're saying. The rest either fail to meet their original targets or miss the original budget or deadlines, and some of them don't even complete a project. So there's a lot of project failure going on, right? And there are gaps. And that's what I'm trying to establish. Now, over the years I've been training this course, I see project management literally, and I think project management literally in everything I do. And I've come to the conclusion that once a project fails, we should do a funeral service for that project. We should all wear black that day. And if it's a major project, that failed, right? Maybe a large project that should bring in billions of revenue. If a large project failed, we should actually put the flag of the country where that project failed at half-mast for that day. Ask me why. So let me tell you, projects have a ripple effect. So when a project fails, right, you can't immediately assess the ripple effect. Some people, when a project fails, oh, we just lost $2 million, we just lost $3 million. No, it's more than that. Now, if a project is successful, just think about this. That project being successful may mean a company is able to hire someone. And that person being able to be hired means a family can get income. And that family getting income means some children can go to school. So when projects fail, sometimes we don't see the ripple effect. We don't see that, look, this thing is going to affect someone somewhere. If you think about it this way, you now realize why there are a lot of, we come to Nigeria, there's so many kids that are out of school. We can trace it to failed projects. In fact, let me give you something I learned 2 years ago or last year. Do you know, I'm sure when I was growing up in secondary school, high school, right? In secondary school, I learned about the Ajaokuta steel rolling mill, one of Nigeria's, it's meant to be the biggest steel rolling mill in Nigeria. Now, 2 years ago, someone told me this, that if our steel rolling mill were functioning at full capacity, the money that Nigeria would be generating from steel would have been the same as we get from our crude oil. So if Nigeria was getting, so just imagine we get our major revenue is crude oil, but imagine we could get twice that. So you can't tell me a failed project doesn't mean anything. It means so much. It means economic development. That's why I wanted you to watch the project economy. A failed project means someone may go home without eating. That's the way I see project management. Now, let me give you more examples, but please permit me to give examples in Nigeria. Who has heard of the East-West Road? East-West Road. Anybody heard of the East-West Road? Yes.
Yes.
All right. I'm happy that you've heard of that. Peter, where do you think East-West Road is?
It's stretching from the, okay. Let me just say the old Eastern region,
Uh-huh.
from Aba to Rivers, Port Harcourt. Yes.
Fantastic. Linking to the west, right?
Yes.
All right. All right. Yes, that's exactly it. Now, let me ask Cynthia. Cynthia, are you familiar with that project? Have you heard of East-West Road? Rhoda? East-West Road. Yeah, Cynthia, are you familiar with it? Cynthia? Okay. All right. I can't hear you, Cynthia, but your mic is unmuted.
Can you hear?
Yes, I can hear now. Yeah. Are you
Okay.
familiar? Yeah.
Was that why they demolished that landmark building?
No.
Okay,
Well,
then I've not heard of
okay. Okay, that landmark building is actually a new project. Is the coastal line.
okay.
Yes, it has nothing to do with East-West Road. Yes,
Okay.
that's another project we need to look at. So,
Okay.
yeah. So East-West Road is just a road connecting many cities, right? Guess when this project started? It's just a couple of states and cities from the west to the east. Guess when this project started? Does anybody have an idea? Yeah,
I
Peter.
think first time during Obasanjo's administration wanted
Yeah,
to, you know,
yes,
every administration keeps talking about it. Jonathan
yeah,
came, Team Buhari,
yes,
not. Uh,
yes. Thank you. So this project started in the year 2000 or 90, I think when Obasanjo got got elected was I think 1999 or 2000. And this project has been ongoing since then. This is 2025 and it is nowhere near complete. So a project that started in 1990 is just like the steel rolling mill. 1976, steel rolling mill was 1976. East-West Road, 1999, year 2000. Now, if they finish it tomorrow, are we meant to celebrate? Are we meant to clap for the government that they did a good job? I don't think so. Because the economic development the road would have brought to those cities, right, is gone. Although it will start, but should we start rejoicing? I'm not sure. So you can see the impact of failed projects. They are very costly, very, very costly. When a project fails, it's really a sad event because we can only imagine what could have been. That's it. So of course, I'm very passionate about this course. So I need to get you in the same mindset that look, projects actually launch countries, they launch institutions. I remember in 2019, I trained a group of NMPC staff managers in Dubai. I was flown to Dubai, and that was my first time, right? And when I landed at Dubai, I asked myself one important question, which is, what does this country have that my country doesn't have in terms of mineral resources? And I couldn't say any, I could not. In fact, we have way more than they do, right? So I concluded there and then, and this is my own opinion, and Nigeria is the richest country in the world because we have so much money, but we have bad leadership. And that's really very, very unfortunate. We have so many untapped minerals, untapped. The potential of Nigeria is huge. But bad leadership, bad projects, the story goes on and on. Let's look at another bullet point. Failed IT projects alone cost the United States $50 to $150 billion in lost revenue and productivity. Failed IT projects alone, just one industry, cost the United States $50 to $150 billion in lost revenue, right? Wastage, right? $50 to $150 billion lost. One country, one industry. Organizations today are wasting an average of $97 million for every $1 billion invested. That's like 10%. Organizations are wasting an average of $97 million for every 1 billion. That's 10%. So just imagine your next project. Let's say your next project is $10 million. And then you ask the bank to give you $1 million. And then you drive to the sea and then just throw the one. That's what organizations are doing. They're wasting money. Now, the reason I start the course with these statistics is to show you that there are gaps. And this is why PMI created this course, so that we can close these gaps. We need more project managers. You saw in the video that 79% of executives believe the future of work will be project-based. We need more projects to run successfully so that, we can have better economy. And that's a project economy. We can actually improve things. We can ensure that projects hit their deadlines and it translates to some form of transformation. And that's where you and I come in. We need more project managers globally. So, yes, welcome again. So let's talk about how projects drive change. How projects drive change. So, if you've been, let's say you're in a classroom and the classroom is a little bit big and you're talking in front. Now, the people at back may say, project. Can you project? I don't know if you've heard that term. It seems to be like a form of old school term. Can you project? We want you to project your voice. And what they're just saying, can you speak louder? Or can you throw your voice to the back? So projects actually serve as something that launches like a missile, something from one place to the other. Like, can you throw your voice? Can you launch your voice? And to back this up, the path of a missile, if a missile is launched here and you wanted to bomb something here, the pathway of a missile is also called a projectile. So from that concept, projects actually move things, move organizations from one state or one position to another. And I'll show you now. So projects drive change. Now, let me say something. Change will happen whether you drive it or not. Every day, look at the mirror, you find out you're changing, but you might not see it until after some time. So change is inevitable. But what projects do is that they help us drive the change we want. And what that means is that it helps us to move organizations and businesses from one state, which we call the current state, to a future state, right? To where we want it to go. So in between where an organization is and where they ought to go is a project in between. Now, I learned something. I studied a course, right? A short course. And the only reason I studied the course was because it had a very interesting name. The name of the course is Enterprise Architecture, right? And why did I study the course? Because everybody knows who an architect is, but I was very curious to know who an enterprise architect is. And what I learned from the course is that this is a IT discipline that helps organizations align their business processes and services with IT, with applications and so on. So it helps to design the blueprint of the processes and services of an organization and how the applications that run support those services in line with the organization's goal, right? So it's a tech kind of certification. But there's something interesting about the enterprise architecture. Probably the only thing I remember about enterprise architecture is this. We talk about an enterprise continuum. So what is enterprise continuum? It simply states that enterprise continuum states that every organization is in a constant state of change. That's what it means. That's all it means. Every organization is in a constant state of change, right? Which means everything is changing. Do you know that this is not limited to organization, but even to people? There's a continuum where we keep changing. Enterprise continuum says that every organization is changing. There's a continuous change. That's enterprise continuum. But you might doubt that because when you went to work on Friday, it didn't seem like anything changed. Everybody did what they do. But how do we know change exists? It is when you take a snapshot in time. If you look at your picture today and take a selfie today and compare it to a selfie you took 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you will know change has happened. So change, we track change when we take a snapshot in time. And you can do the same thing for organizations. You can take a snapshot of organizations over time and really track the change. And for that, I'm going to do something. I'm going to take us back like 30 years. Okay, maybe 30 years is too much, but let's assume everybody can still remember 30 years. And if you are in Nigeria, you know, I've appealed that. Let me use Nigerian examples. That's what I know very well. So the question is, what was the current state of the banking industry in Nigeria in 1995? I don't know how many of us can remember or how many of us remember, but I'll tell you. Yeah, Peter, you remember, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. All right, Cynthia, Rhoda, please join in if you remember. So, Peter, what do you remember? Banking in 1995, what was it like?
Yeah, very analog. They give you little receipts. As is then I remember if you really told there was really no transfer, nothing like transfer. It was very analog. You go there, small pay slip. They give you one small pay slip. You send in money, but interbank transfer wasn't really there because
Thank you.
to particular bank.
Yes. Can you remember if you open an account, Oceanic Bank account in Victoria Island, you open, you opened it in Victoria Island, they have a branch in Ikeja. You drive to Ikeja and say you want to access your account. They will direct you back that you didn't open your bank account. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember that? So
you
that
pay,
means
you cannot, you only go to your bank to do most of the transactions.
you see. So there was no intrabank transactions, right?
Yes.
Right? Okay. Do you remember that there was a time that if you go to the bank, they'll give you a tally.
Yes, tell you, yes.
They were using tally system, which means, oh,
They
security
give
guy.
one more like a teller they give you, take it who like a teller is your own
It's
small kind of teller.
cash book. It's
Cash book,
it's
cash
cash
book, yeah.
book. The
Yeah.
day you go to bank without cash book,
Yes, they
I
okay,
don't,
you write
I
your
don't,
balance somewhere here.
yeah, don't, if sometimes you might not even see money that day.
Yes.
And bring your cash book. So these were the dark ages of banking. We're talking about 30 years ago. Nothing like mobile apps, nothing like ATM, right? So if we could rewind time to 1995, that would have been the current state. That would have been our current state. And then, so if we're back in 1995, this would have been our current state. And then 2025 would have been our future state. And would that's if we were in 1995. But of course, we're not in 1995. Our future state is what, from 1995, all the things we have now would have been something they were looking at in the future. But what's the backbone of most of the things we have now? Like internet banking, intra-bank transactions, no need for teller systems, we have ATMs. Most of this innovation was based on the backbone of the internet. So projects surrounding application development, using internet, using servers, those were the projects that launched us into our current state now. So I'm going to come back to 2025 and let's look at the current state of banking now. So we have internet banking, we have mobile banking, we have intra-banking. We can do intra-banking transactions, right, from anywhere. We also have ATMs and other innovative products and services. Now, so now we're in 2025. What do you think the future holds? Where is the financial or banking institution heading? Does anybody have any guess or suggestion? Now, let me say something. There are already trends. Yes, there are already trends that you can say this is where we're going to end up eventually. Yeah, Peter.
We will probably go into AI because the way it's going to be more of AI banking. Maybe you
Okay.
just from your own with a voice oath with just also amount straight away. That's all.
Fantastic. Yes, AI banking. But what kind of would we be using cash? Do you think cash is going to be more
No.
prominent? Yes.
Mm.
So
Mm.
what do you think we'll be using?
I think maybe coin might because coin is already becoming maybe just virtual money basically.
Yes, like crypto, right?
Crypto, yeah.
Crypto e-currencies is the future. So that means that this is what is going to take over from most of these things. And the projects that will be relevant will be projects relating to AI and machine learning, right? ML, machine learning, right? Crypto requires blockchain. So we also have blockchain. So there'll be a lot of projects. I think there's one more. I think there's one more. Yes. Does anybody have any other suggestion? Or what's going to launch us into the future state? But I think that's it. A lot of projects on AI, machine learning, blockchain technologies, and this will launch us to this future state. So you can see that in between where we are currently and the future are a series of projects that will take us there. So this is the value of projects. If any organizations that sees projects this way understands that to move to the next level, we just need to implement strategic projects. And that's what this is saying. Okay. All right. Guess what? We have reached our 1 hour mark, which means it's time for a 10-minute break. So let's talk about project initiation context. And what this is saying is talking about how projects are started. What could lead to a project starting, right? So first of all, the project can start based on regulatory requirements. I remember in 2005, the then CBN governor said that every Nigerian bank must have a minimum capital base of 25 billion naira. And what happened afterwards was a restructuring of the entire banking industry. Some banks bought over some banks. Some banks had to go to the stock market. Some banks merged, and that's what happened. So regulatory requirements can lead to projects. Satisfying stakeholders. So some of your customers have been asking for a particular service or product, and you embark on a project to meet their request. So projects can be started based on the request of stakeholders, right? That's another way projects get started. Projects can get started when you need to create, improve, or fix products, processes, or services. So let's say, for example, you manage a plant, right? Many equipments. From time to time, you're going to do maintenance. From time to time, you're going to overhaul some equipment. From time to time, you will do some engineering projects. That is also something that happens. Then the fourth, but not the least, this is not an exhaustive list. There are other things that can initiate projects, right? We also have implement or change business or technology strategies, right? In order to implement business or technology strategies, we use projects. You can see that from the first slide that we talked about today, that projects can lead to changes in an organization from a strategic point of view. And a lot of strategies involve technology nowadays. Technology is changing the way we operate. In fact, I probably will not be able to do this without technology. We're in different locations. How would it have happened? So a lot of organizations are putting they're using technology as a strategy to innovate their offerings. And that's it. Who knows, in the next 10 or 20 years, we'll probably put on a virtual reality glass, VR goggle, and we'll probably be seeing each other in a virtual class. Probably that's the next level, right? But technology is changing the way we work, changing our businesses, changing them for good. We have self-driving cars. I'm sure it'll be a matter of time. We'll have pilotless planes. I'm sure the technology exists, but I don't know who would like to experiment first. All right. So that's a feature that probably can happen sooner or later. All right. So let's move on. Let's move on and talk about the importance of project management. Why is project management important? So first of all, it helps us to manage stakeholder expectations, right? There's a module in the 10 knowledge areas that talks about stakeholder management, right? The goal of your project is to be able to satisfy stakeholders and meet their expectations. And that's why we have a module, a knowledge area, on how to identify manage, and, you know, ensure that stakeholder needs and expectations are met. Project management helps us to set and meet business objectives. So project management ensures that we can put in the processes, the people, and to execute a project that will ensure business objectives are achieved. A business objective could be that your organization wants to reduce operating costs, right? Or a business objective could be that your organization wants to minimize cyber security attacks by 50%. So we can implement a project that will achieve that for the organization. Project management helps us to increase the chances of success. And what do I mean by that? So project management is primarily a planning tool. It is primarily a planning tool. And of course, I'm sure you know the saying, if you fail to plan, then you've planned to fail. Organizations that do not plan usually fail on their initiatives. The way project management helps to increase chances of success is that we plan everything through. That's why we have the planning process group. Project management helps us to optimize the use of organizational resources, helps us to leverage on available resources that can help us to execute the project. This means that in your organization, it's possible that there are some resources that are not maximized, that we can employ them on projects which are temporary, so that we can leverage on available resources and achieve project objectives. Let's move on. Project management helps us to deliver the right product at the right time. This is why we have a schedule knowledge area. This helps us to plan and ensure that we can deliver on time, right? So this is also an important thing. Have you imagined if a wedding cake arrives a day after the wedding, what will happen? Of course, that is a very critical disaster. So how do we ensure that customers get their products or project deliverables at the right time? We have to plan. We have to create a schedule. We have to ensure that schedule is managed. And so project management helps us to do that. Project management helps us to respond to risk in a timely manner. Project management works on risk in a proactive manner. And that's why we have the risk knowledge area. We identify and analyze risk in order to develop a risk response so that when the risk occurs, we already know what to do with the risk. Now, project management helps us to balance and manage constraints. So what is a constraint? And when we talk about constraints, we can talk about scope, schedule, cost, resource constraint. So what is a constraint? I don't know where I got this definition, but it has stuck with me for years, so I use it. A constraint is something you don't have in unlimited abundance. Because if you had it in unlimited abundance, it won't be a constraint. So money is usually a constraint on projects. You have a fixed budget. Nobody gives you an endless budget for a project. Resources, the number of team members you have, can also be a constraint. Time of delivery can also be a constraint. So the efficient use of resources in order to manage constraints is how we manage constraints. But there's another word here, balance constraints. So let me explain how we balance constraints using this example. So let's say that you want to execute a project, and that project usually costs $3 million, right? But somehow you got $4 million, right, for that project, which means you got $1 million extra to finance the project. However, on the other side, this project normally takes 6 months to deliver, but now the customer is requesting that you deliver the project in 4 months. What will you do? What will you do? Yes. Cynthia, what will you do? Peter, Rhoda, what will you do? Cynthia, what will you do? Let me start with Cynthia. What will you do? Yeah. I can't hear you. Yeah, Cynthia, we can't hear you.
Okay, I said, could you go over the question again? I just really want to understand, please. Sorry.
Okay. So you want to execute a project, you need $3 million, but you are able to get $4 million for the project. However, this project normally takes 6 months, but the customer is asking you to deliver in 4 months. What will you do? Get a question?
I have $4 million.
Yes, you have $4 million.
And the project normally takes, and
6
the
months.
customer is telling me to
Deliver in 4 months.
to deliver.
Yeah.
I would have to do, I don't know. Because what I wanted to say was I was going to do it more or less like, I would definitely work with what he has, yes, but because I will have to put in the budget he has into, I'll have to put it into consideration. But then again, it's not going to work because it's going to be a shabby project.
Why? Why won't it work?
Okay, because the customer is saying, normally this project takes 6 months, but the customer is saying he wants 4 months, and the budget I have is less than the amount.
No,
given.
The budget you have is $4 million, but you normally spend $3 million on that project.
Oh, I even have more than enough.
Exactly.
Oh, I know it would work now. So basically, just to me, it's just one, getting the right persons, because that's what would actually determine if your project goes well or not.
Okay.
So I think it would be getting the right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Getting the right persons, getting my materials on time, even if some materials might not be able to come as they should, but seeing that I have more than enough, is just going above and beyond to ensure that I have my materials on time, but mainly concentrating more on getting the right sub-traders, because I would need that to ensure that I deliver my work smoothly and within the time, within the customer's time. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, Peter, what do you think?
Okay. I think we face this kind of challenges all the time. First of all, we look at our constraint. The normal projects or costs, my available resources, financial wise, here is 4 million.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, the project normally costs 3 million.
Yeah.
And who are my stakeholders here? Actually, my major concern for this project is time.
Yes.
4 months.
Yeah.
So that one is what, for me, that one to some extent is fixed. So if I'm negotiating, I'm going to negotiate anything around that. So every other thing, finance is, in as much I'm going to be spending my finance prudentially. So like my deliverable, the schedules and all that. So what comes in here? I look at maybe our subcontractor, whomever we contracted things that get the things done. If there is need, another thing we could just incentivize some of these things. Okay, normally maybe for people that normally deliver steel, as the case may be. For instance, maybe some of them normally deliver maybe maybe 2 weeks, I could say, okay, fine. For extra incentive, if you could deliver this on so time, we're going to give you extra this. So that one is an incentive for people to
Yes.
actually do what they ought to do.
Mm.
And if needs hiring more people to get this done on time or working 24 hours, the case may be to get it done. But putting down in mind, I'm not just going to be throwing the finances everywhere. I'm still trying to limit into within this 3 million, but in a scenario that is not going to work, that's where I will start pushing. I'm gonna start stretching it, taking from that extra 1 million I have. And also, what do I need to do if really some processes can be taken out completely if possible? And some of the process too, some of them can also work pari passu. Maybe for instance, if you are pouring concrete, this and that. So that's the way you shorten time. So you have money to work with. So as much as I'm trying to spend prudentially, I don't just like throwing the money around. That case, I think I might be able to deliver within that time. But always putting in mind, the focus is I have to deliver within 4 months.
Yes, instead of 6 months. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, you took a lot of you took a number of steps, which I'm sure will also get the project completed in 4 months. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's hear from Rhoda. Rhoda, what would your approach be? Yeah.
Okay. I will increase the resources. I mean, human resource now to
Okay.
an effective level. Maybe if two people are meant to finish the work, and I see that okay, if I increase to 3 or 4, it will still they will still work but deliver it at an earlier time. Then I will increase the number of people doing it. And if there's any way I can introduce the use of machine to make it faster, I will do that since there is enough budget for that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, let me ask Ayodeji. Ayodeji is just joining us for the first time. So this is the scenario. You are financing a project, you have $3 million, but you, by a stroke of luck, you got $1 million extra, which means it's $4 million you have. But what the cost of the project is usually $3 million. On the flip side, the project normally takes 6 months, but your client is demanding that you complete the project in 4 months. What will you do? Ayodeji? Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. Hi, everybody. If I have a 6 month project at the budget of 3 million, and I have an extra 1 million making 4 million, and my client is asking me to fast track to 4 months, I'll think about how I can speed up my production, either by bringing in more people, or I'll spend money to gain time. So maybe increase my expertise on the project, or if it's that I need to get my materials in bulk, that will delay delivery and production costs. So that's what I'll be looking at.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Everybody's correct, right? Basically, you have extra money, leverage on the extra money to save time. Basically, in all that we've said, in all the approaches you've said, is leveraging money to save time. That is what we call balancing constraints, not managing. We're balancing. So let's say I have extra money, but I don't have enough resources. I can use the money to balance out resources. Maybe I have a small team. I can use money. And we can also look at it vice versa, where I have a project, I have a long time to finish the project, then I may hire fewer resources because based on the capacity of the resources, they can fill out the project over a long period of time. So it's one thing to manage project constraints, it's another thing to balance them out. So that if I have an excess of a particular constraint or something above what I need, I can channel that extra resource into other areas of my project. That's basically what we're saying. So project management helps us to balance and manage constraints. Project management helps us to identify, recover, or terminate failing projects. So we're going to get to a topic probably next weekend where what we call benefits management. And basically, one of the rules that guides whether we should continue a project or not is, can we still get benefits? If benefits are no longer realizable, you should stop the project, and benefits most time means money. So if you're working on a project that there are no benefits, that's when you should say stop. If there are potential benefits, maybe we can try to recover the project or try to restructure the project. But the moment benefits are no longer realizable, that's when you should stop the project. Project management helps us to do that. So let's move on and talk about the environment in which projects operate. Now, over the years, I've discovered that projects sometimes behave like human beings, because human beings operate in environments and they operate differently based on the environment they are. For example, I'm in Nigeria, it's nice and warm. I'm just wearing a t-shirt. But I'm not sure that if I was in Canada or US, I'll be wearing the t-shirt the way I'm wearing it, right? So my environment has an impact on me. The same thing happens to projects. If I'm in the Sahara Desert, I'll probably dress differently. My environment determines how I speak, what I eat, and the same thing happens to projects, and I'll show you how. So we're going to talk about the project environment and what influences project environment and how projects behave. You see that projects behave like people, right, in some extent. So let's look at the environments in which projects operate. Now, this brings us to what we call project influences. And what is a project influence? An influence is something that is not within the control of the project manager or his team. So project influences are things that a project manager cannot control. Let me bring it home. If you're taking a walk in the park and it starts raining, that rain is going to influence your behavior. And unless you have some superpower, there's nothing you can do to the rain. So influences are those things that the project manager cannot control. Is out of his pay grade, out of his league. There's nothing he can do. But he still has to manage the project within those constraints, those influences. And that's what we want to discuss. Part of the project influences is the environment in which the project operates. And the word EEF stands for enterprise environmental factors. EFs. Now, I normally like turning this around and change it to factors that affect the environment of projects. So I flipped it. I think it makes better sense. Oh, sorry, did I put project? No, of an enterprise. Yes. So factors that affect the environment of an enterprise. Now, dictionary meaning of enterprise means project or business, right? So factors that affect the environment of a project or business is what enterprise environmental factors are. So what are these factors that affect projects or businesses? We have two types of enterprise environmental factors. We have the external factors, we have the internal factors. Now, I'm not sure, are we familiar with a concept in management? It's usually used to evaluate the external environment of business. It's called PERSOL analysis. Is anybody familiar with PERSOL analysis? Some people call it PESTEL. Are we familiar with PERSOL analysis? It's usually a subject under management, accounting, how you analyze the external business environment? Anybody at all?
Yes, don't think I can remember exactly, but I know then was that project environment. I know that thing was target or so, yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an acronym. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's an
yes.
acronym.
So let me
I think
refresh your memory.
political environment.
Political, yes. Sociocultural and co.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is what PESO means. It starts with political, right? Political, environmental. No. Yes, environmental is there, but let me put economical factors, sociocultural factors, technological factors, legal, and environmental. Now, so when we talk about enterprise environmental factors that are external to businesses or projects, PESOL is a very good framework because these factors affect the project environment. Remember, we're talking about environmental factors, and I said earlier that the environment affects projects. So let's look at how these factors affect projects. In fact, let's start with politics. Now, how does politics affect projects? In fact, let me speak of politics like an environmental factor. What is the height of the political season in any country? Can you say I've changed it to an environmental factor? What is the height of politics in any country? What's the height? What's the height of the political season in any country?
Presidential election.
Thank you. There's nothing higher than that. Now, what happens to projects in this season? And this is like an environment. It's just like me asking, what happens in winter season? Right? What happens to projects in the political presidential season? What happens? Do we have many projects kicking off at that point in time? The political season. What happens to
Yes.
projects?
No.
No, most times depends because for the private sector, most times they're trying to be careful, but political part, they bring out a lot of projects. So whether they will complete or not is a different thing, but projects are always kicking off here, for political reasons most times.
Okay, all right. Rhoda, let's say okay. Let's hear Rhoda's view, Ayodeji's view afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah,
Rhoda.
during the election period, payments are usually being paused for projects because they are not sure of what the outcome of the election will be and if the project will still continue after the regime.
Okay, all right. Ayodeji, let's hear your view.
Everybody's trying to spend the budget they have, so if it may get cancelled in the next cycle, and nobody's starting any new one because you don't know if you'll be supported in the next cycle. So the ball is up in the air, and you're trying to protect yourself.
Okay, awesome. Cynthia, any views from you?
No, I agree with all everyone said.
Okay, fine. That's great. So basically, when elections are about to happen in the private sector, especially where you have investment, you find out that investors hold on because they need to know who the next president will be and whether that president is going to go with policies that will favor their investment. So usually in the private sector, we find out that projects are slowing down, right? It's like a season, which means in this season, don't expect to see many projects being executed. In the government aspect, yes, people are trying to wrap up, spend their budget, and so on. But you can see that we can actually tell what happens in that season that period of election, throughout the electoral process. So it affects projects, just like winter affects you as a person. Harmattan affects me, I'm in Nigeria as a person. It affects projects. What about economic factors? Do you know that there's no insurance company in Nigeria that can insure a brand new Airbus? So most airlines don't insure in Nigeria. That's an economic factor, which means that economically there are some projects that are not sustainable in some economies. That's an environmental factor. What about technological factor? Lagos State has been trying to implement smart city, but if you don't have infrastructure, you don't have internet everywhere, how do you want to manage, or how do you want to implement a smart city? So they have to look at that. It's going to be a factor that will influence whether they can work with a smart city. And then there are some projects that damage the environment, and that's where the environmental factors, it affects the external environment, maybe a plant that is creating toxic substance. So all these are things that affect projects externally, and usually they affect more than one organization within an industry. So this analysis is used to assess the business environment, which also affects projects. That's the enterprise environmental factors external. We also have internal factors. Internal factors are within the organization. So these are things that affect projects internally, not outside, internally. So organization, culture, structure, and governance. Have you guys heard that culture will eat strategy for lunch? Who has heard that saying? Culture will eat strategy for lunch.
Heard it, Arise TV.
Arise TV. Okay. It is, and if you understand what this means, in large organizations, before they embark on major projects, they will do change management. Why? So what change management does is that they try to change the organization's culture so that when the new solution or new deliverable comes or the new software comes, people will not reject it. Culture can eat strategy up. Culture can rubbish your project when you do it. You could have a project where you've installed a new software where everybody in the organization should be excited, but you just find out that nobody's using it. You have to go back to the old software. It's culture that is happening. I have a particular example of a company in Nigeria. It's an internet service provider. The CEO wanted to have real-time analytics, real-time information on sales. Of course, who wouldn't want to have that in a large internet service provider firm? And so he spent millions of naira on Bitrix CRM solution, which is meant to give them real-time analytics. And they implemented. But guess what? The sales guys that are meant to be entering data as they generate sales are not used to carrying a pad, jumping, some of them jumping transport from one place to the other, entering data on the go. And so they frustrated it and they just stopped using the system. That is culture. So when an organization is not used to a system and you introduce that system without creating an orientation or having people to champion that change, that's what culture is. So culture is the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that influence how people behave in an organization. And it is a big hindrance. It can be a big hindrance to you when you're implementing new projects, especially if it's for the organization. So culture is something that most large organizations pay attention to. If you've ever heard change management in some organizations, that's what they do. They want to implement something new, They know that these guys, if they attack this new thing, that's the end. So they'll start orientation, they'll start showing you there's a new solution coming up, the advantages, they'll be telling you, they'll be starting training, orientation, and so on, because they need to change the culture. Structure is another one. We're going to talk about organization structures. Let me check my time. Possibly next week. Yes, next week. We're going to talk about organization structure and governance, how an organization is governed, right? Project governance. These are internal factors, which means the culture of one organization can be different from the culture of another organization. Another internal factor that can affect projects is having capable employees, employee capability. So imagine you want to create a software project, you want to create a software, but you don't have software developers. You don't have employees capable of doing the work of the project. That's not having the resource, the employees that can do the work is an internal factor. Resource availability. This is talking about, okay, even if you have capable employees, are they available? Or are they working on several projects and you don't have resources available? Resource availability can also speak to getting external contractors to be able to do your work. Do you even have external contractors, right? Do you have to source someone from India? What's the availability of this kind of resources on your project? Information technology software. This is an internal factor. The software you use can aid how you manage your project. So imagine two organizations. One organization uses software to keep track of their project activities and so on. And another organization doesn't do that. Of course, the organization that uses software will probably perform better. So what kind of software does your organization use to track projects? What software do you use to manage communication on projects? So it's an internal factor. Infrastructure, talk about the available facilities, equipment that are available to work on projects. And for IT projects, infrastructure could also talk about your available IT infrastructure, the kind of computers, routers, and software that you have currently. It defines your IT infrastructure. Then, where are your resources located? Geographical distribution of facilities. Where are your resources located? Are they spread across a particular geographical region? Are they co-located in one area? This also talks about your internal factors that affect projects. Okay, so we've talked about external, right? We use the personal analysis, but this is another view of it, which maps to the person. These are also external factors like marketplace condition. Marketplace condition talks about your competitors. Competitors can influence your projects. If let me look at two companies that are competing. So if Honda is working on an innovative product, you'll find out that Toyota is likely going to, or should I do it the other way around? If Toyota is working on an innovative product, you'll find out it's going to influence Honda also carry out their project. So this is another view of external factors, which I feel that PESO covers a large chunk of this. So let's talk about the left-hand side of project influences, which are called OPAs. OPAs is organization process assets. Now, the reason why you need to understand this is that we need to understand the constraints that you probably have And we've seen the environmental factors, both external and internal. Now we want to look at internal factors. These are internal factors, and it's called OPAS. It's an acronym for Organization Process Assets. And it's divided into two parts, which I'm going to explain now. Now, we're talking about what influences your project. And one of the things that influences your project are the policies, processes, and procedures of your organization, which means we can't do things anyhow. There are some policies that govern how things should be done. So these things also constrain what we do on a project. For example, if your project is in the oil and gas industry, right, there are some safety policies that will affect your project, right? Or if you're thinking about the kind of reward, right, you should give to your team members, your company's compensation policies can drive how you reward your project team members, which means that the organization's processes, policies, procedures still affect our projects. Your project is not outside, completely outside what you do in your organization. Your project will still align with the processes, policies, and procedures of your current organization, right? So these are internal constraints, internal factors that affect our project. Then another part of organization process assets is called knowledge bases. Now, knowledge bases are historical, or should I say, information that you've captured or knowledge you've captured from projects over time. Now, why is this important? So let me explain this. So there's a time a friend of mine got a job in NNPC, right? And went for training and eventually was posted to the refinery. So we hadn't spoken for like 1 or 2 years. Then we got talking. And I said, wow, you're working in refinery. I'm sure you're doing a lot in maintaining the refinery. And he said something that was shocking. He said, it doesn't do anything at the refinery. I said, well, you're an engineer. He said, other people do the maintenance of the refinery. I said, why? Why? I was shocked that, so what are you doing in the refinery? He said that it is is contractors that maintain the refinery. Because when the Israelis built the refinery, the first set of engineers that they trained are the only ones that know how to maintain the refinery. So that means there's a knowledge gap. So new engineers don't know what old engineers know. Now, the reason this happens is because there's no way of capturing knowledge and transferring that knowledge. When you complete a project, the knowledge captured should be stored so that things like that don't happen. You can imagine a large organization like NNPC is having issue on knowledge. They can't transfer knowledge. So on projects, it can be a big problem, especially when your project manager that you've had for 10 years is now relocating or going to another company, and you have not gathered knowledge about your projects, information, you've not studied, and so he's the only one that knows everything about your project. So the moment he goes, no other person. And this has affected a lot of companies, especially in Nigeria, based on the mass relocation of people. The moment some key guys travel, the department couldn't work on some projects anymore. So part of organization process asset is the knowledge base of projects that have been captured over time that are useful for referencing for future projects. So how do we capture these knowledge bases? How do we capture these knowledge bases? We can use things like configuration management knowledge. What is configuration management? Configuration management helps you to store information about product changes. And when you think about software, anytime a software is updated, they change the version number. This is why software, you start with version 1.0, then 1.1, there's a small update. That is configuration management. So when you're working on a product and there have been modifications on that product, configuration management stores that knowledge so that if anybody is working on the product in the future, they can understand the changes that the product has undergone. This knowledge is important, especially when the product has been completed and there are issues and your support guys need to track what could be causing the problem. Configuration management is important. Financial data. We shouldn't finish a project and then we're now asking the project manager or accountant that has gone to another company how much we spend on a project. So we need to store this information in knowledge bases. Historical information and lessons learned. So what did you learn on that project? Lessons learned. Have you studied? Lessons learned are important because you don't want another team to make the mistake that you discovered on your own project. So we document lessons learned. Issues and defect management, data, issues that came up in a project and defects and how we resolved it should be stored, and project files from previous projects. So let's say you reference an Excel document for your project. That Excel document should also be stored. And that's it. So this is all the time that we have for tonight's class. Can I get some feedback on the class? How did we go? Will you show up next weekend? Yes, let's hear from, okay, let's start from Cynthia. Although Ayodeji's name is now on top, so we'll be asking Ayodeji, but because it just came, so we'll ask him last. Cynthia, so what do you think about tonight's class? Oh, for me, it's tonight. So
Okay.
yeah.
To this evening's class, because it's evening here, is actually very informative, and this is very long and well detailed, as against the one we did yesterday. But it's also an eye opener because some of the things you discussed about, even if I didn't know the name or the terms, but discussing about it and I understand certain things as related to the company I work in. So it's a good one for me.
Awesome. So you come back next weekend?
Of course.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia. Yes. So let me ask Peter. Peter, how did today's class go? What can we improve? What do we need to watch? Yes, Peter, over to you.
Really, for me, it was engaging like the previous one, but I think it was even more detailed, like Cynthia said. But as the lecture was going on, I was thinking, oh, what can we improve? But really, nothing has really come out yet. So not as if I'm a critic, but I am that kind of person from my organization based on where I work. I'm always looking at the way of improving any processes, but really, I've not seen maybe any area we need to improve on, or maybe after more classes, maybe it may come up, but as it is now, it's just okay, just good. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter, for your feedback. All right, let's hear from Rhoda.
Okay, before I forget, I might not be in the maybe next class, but I will just watch the video at the end of I'll watch the videos.
Okay, is that both classes? We have Saturday.
Both classes. I have an engagement for those days, but I'll watch the videos.
Okay, no problem. We'll miss you in advance. All right.
I'll miss the class too.
All right. Okay. Fantastic. Let's hear from Rhoda.
I think it's quite engaging and it's giving the vibes of we are now getting to the real business. And the part I love was is the acronym, the pastel. In fact, I had to form my own internal acronym, and the pictures they're okay.
Awesome. Awesome. Rhoda is a businesswoman. We've got to the real business. Awesome. Yes, let's hear from Adeji. Adeji, you're welcome. So, from the part you joined, can you give us a feedback?
I have no criticism at all. It's been satisfactory, and I'm looking forward for the future classes.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for joining again. So, just a reminder, Saturdays are 3 hours, Sundays are 2 hours. Saturday, we start 11 a.m. Nigerian time. Sundays is 8:30 p.m. Nigerian time. All right, good. Have the have a good day ahead and good night if you're in Nigeria. God bless everyone and thank you for joining. Bye. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank